So, hi guys, welcome to the podcast. As I did mention to you guys on our social media platforms, that we are having an exclusive with Ian right now, right? So, hi Ian, how are you doing?
I'm doing really well. It's great to be with you today, Simanya.
Yes, it's really a pleasure to actually have you here. And just to try and just go ahead with the and start the podcast. Ian, could you please tell us more about who is Ian, right?
Certainly. So, thank you very much. So, I am also known as Morpheus, and the reason I'm
Yeah,
known as Morpheus is that that is kind of a mythical or mystical name for me. You know, the god of dreams, the king of dreams, the one who awakens dreams in others, the one who isn't the hero, but who raises up heroes, the one who
yeah,
believes when others are not believing. Um, that's kind of just who I am. But a little bit more about me. My background was actually I had nearly 20 years in the IT industry, culminating in working for Microsoft for the last 5 years. And ever
okay,
since then, so the last 22 years, I have been focused on developing leaders, especially conscious leaders, and actually transforming conscious leadership as I think we all know, leadership could do with some transformation.
yeah. That's true. That's true. And as you have mentioned that you've been in the IT industry, right, for a very long time. So, uh, I just have to ask you, what actually got you to a point where you found IT interested, or what got you to that specific point where you were actually in the IT industry?
So the IT industry was always attractive to me because I kind of enjoy gadgets. I've always enjoyed a
Mm,
little bit of technology, that kind of thing. And I had two brothers who were in IT, older brothers. I'm the last born,
okay.
and so two older brothers, and they made it sound interesting. And I thought, well, let me get into that as well. Um, and what I hadn't really got to know who I really am at that point, because if I
Okay.
look back over time, I realized that whilst I had some of the intelligence, there was other things that I was better at. And so over time, even within IT, my career migrated from very technical roles and technical management roles ultimately to product marketing roles and launching big products and being on stages and that kind of thing. So during the 19 years I was there, there was
Okay.
a transition as well.
Oh, okay. So while you were in the IT industry and working for Microsoft, um so basically you're saying that that is where you started to learn more about who um who Ian was, right? So and in terms of also being a speaker, that's where you actually learned that from.
You know, I used to find that I got such a reputation for doing product launches, being on stage, that kind of thing. And my reputation in some of the more sort of technical parts of the role was never that strong.
Okay.
And, started to win awards for doing team type work and leadership type work rather than technical work, which I never really won
Okay.
awards for. And so it was just a very natural progression that led to me going, actually, I really enjoy speaking. I always have enjoyed speaking.
Mm,
And I love, doing this work, being on a stage and inspiring people and giving people ideas. And another characteristic of my style that developed was a lot of authenticity. So I would sometimes be interviewed by journalists, and they would say, "Oh, so are you trying to tell me the product's perfect?" I say, "No, it's not perfect. Here's where the problems are." And then they would write very positive articles because I was being honest. And so there's
yeah.
a lot of authenticity that developed into my style as well.
Okay. And in your journey in the IT industry and also in the leadership industry, would you say who would you say was your mentor, and how was your experience in the industry?
Mm. I've actually had many mentors. So I think let me start with probably the first person that ever influenced me in terms of leadership was somebody called Ken Blanchard. He wrote the original One Minute Manager. In fact, he's written about 85 books now.
Okay.
And I also was trained when I was at Microsoft on two of the courses, the situational leadership and the situational team leadership, that were Ken Blanchard courses. So, but the first management book I ever read was The 1 Minute Manager back in the 1980s when I first became a manager. And so that already set me on my course. And to this day, I still do some work for the Ken Blanchard companies.
Okay.
So that was probably my original inspiration, and I've met Ken many times, and yeah, he really did intrigue me. But over later years, it was more people like Brene Brown and Marcus Buckingham that
Oh,
started to
okay.
influence me even more, because I think a lot of what I do now aligns very closely with some of their work. In
Okay.
terms of my personal mentorship, I've had various people in my life who have influenced me and mentored me and inspired me. I had a rugby coach at school who kind of took me under his wing and mentored me, and that got me going. For the first time ever speaking publicly was because of him. Um,
Okay.
and uh, and then even more recently in life, just there's another guy called Stephen Herzig who mentored me for a long time. He now lives in the UK. So I've had a lot of that as well. But I know that your focus is entrepreneurship, and I needed an
Yeah.
entrepreneur mentor too. And so I
Okay.
have two people that I work with. Their names are Mike Handcock and Lundy Jack,
Okay.
and I work with both of them. And they've mentored me more on the entrepreneurship skills, and they still do today. I've been working with them now for 6 years.
Okay. That's really amazing, you know. That's really amazing because I think I did mention what when we were on a there was a post that I actually did on the podcast, right? And I mentioned that um for a lot of for a lot of entrepreneurs, they don't actually get they don't get a lot of mentors, right? And having to see that at least while when you were starting your journey, you you had the support system. You had people that were motivating you to get you to where you needed to go, you know. That's really amazing to hear, you know.
It's absolutely critical because some people are natural entrepreneurs. I've got a friend who I think when he was 4 years old, he would take vegetables from his parents' garden and go and sell them to the neighbors. He's a natural
Mm,
entrepreneur. I'm not so much of a natural entrepreneur. I have a business because of speaking, and as a
yeah.
speaking person, I need to have my own business. And so I've really had to learn the skills. I've really had to embrace being mentored and being humble enough to be mentored because otherwise I would have failed in my business.
Yeah. And also you actually mentioned something, which is you had to be humble enough, you know, which is something that is hard to find, you know, because not many people are actually humble enough to say that they need the assistance, they need the help, you know, which is something that is really amazing, you know.
Yeah, exactly. And without that humility, what often then happens is that we think we're supposed to know it all. And then when we fail, we kind of suddenly then get humbled. Why not start up front and say, let me get help, let me read books, let me find people who've been there, who've done that.
Yeah,
There's so many examples of people around that know how to succeed, even in small businesses, in the townships and stuff. There's so much wisdom out there. I think Africa is very entrepreneurial, and we
that's
should be
true.
tapping into each other's wisdom. And the marketplace is big enough. We can learn from each other and flourish.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. And just so that I can just ask you something. In terms of when you were getting into the leadership development side, right? What are some challenges you faced in making this transition? And how did you actually overcome them?
Well, that's actually a long story. So let me do this. I'm going to start with one of the reasons that I left the IT world and got into leadership development is obviously because I wanted to be a speaker, but there's actually a lot more to it. I saw how bad leadership could be done. I even saw how bad my own leadership could be at times. And so I
Okay.
decided I really needed to make this change. And so I decided straight away that a big career change like that needs a big change in my whole life. So I did a master's degree in organizational leadership to get upskilled in these fields. Even though I had a lot of experience and exposure, I decided I needed this master's degree because I wanted to work globally and I needed a global qualification that would help me. So
Okay.
now, armed with my master's degree and all my 19 years of experience in IT and everything, I thought, well, I'm now ready to change the world. I'm now ready to go out there and I've got all the answers and all this kind of thing.
Yeah.
Well, you know how that story goes. It doesn't quite work. It turns out that one of the key elements that I had not yet dealt with was self-leadership.
Okay.
And so, as much as I had this dream and this vision of transforming the world, I hadn't yet transformed myself. And so, what happened is that, um, 7 years after completing my master's degree, I had a triple crisis. I went through a divorce. My business partner and I split up, so I lost the business, and
Okay.
then also I had been involved in a particular spiritual community, and I left that as well. And I went, and for the first time in my life, properly looked in the mirror and said, "What do I see here, and what do I need to develop?" And I developed a saying which everybody in that I mentor nowadays knows. And the saying is this: as a leader, my number one job today is me.
Okay.
Because you see,
Yeah.
if we
True.
don't build the capacity here, if we don't build the love, if we don't build the influence, the ability to listen to ourselves, how do we listen to others? If we cannot influence ourselves, how do we influence others? And so that became my turning point. And immediately I was starting to have a bigger impact externally as well because I was leading internally.
Okay. And that is that's something that is really, really important, you know. It's like um a matter of having to say that if you don't take care of yourself, or the problems that if you don't take care of the problems that you have or in your personal life, sometimes those problems will tend to become an issue in the business side of things, you know.
Every
And
time.
yes, and most of the time, that is something that I've also had that's something that I've noticed, and I've had to also try to change, you know, in a lot of times.
Sumanya, we got to plan that this is not a sprint, this is a marathon. And that
Exactly.
means we need to be building our capacity all of the time. If we are, and I'm not saying that we don't need to work hard. Obviously, we need to work hard.
Yeah.
Any entrepreneur, any startup is going to take you long hours and all that kind of thing. But if we're not nurturing the capacity for that in ourselves, then it's going to bite us when we most don't need it to bite us. So we really want to be making sure that we're taking care of ourselves. That's physically, emotionally, our brains. We need to be educating ourselves. We need to be open to being taught things.
Yeah.
And even if it's just, 20 minutes a day or half an hour a day, we are our number one job. And everything that we nurture here will see us through to all of the brilliant things that we can do as entrepreneurs.
That's very true. That's very true, Ian, and thank you for actually mentioning that, you know. And also, um, Ian, how do you actually define conscious leadership, and um, what differentiate it if it from the traditional leadership models?
So most of the traditional leadership models tend to focus on one of two things. Either they're people focused or they're
Okay.
results focused. And very often what happens is the people focused ones don't get the results, and the results focused one don't have the sustainable people. And so in the end, it falls down. And
Yeah.
what I don't find anybody who's completely on the two extremes, but most people are somewhere in the middle, constantly working from the external pressures. So Oh, the people are asking for this. Oh, the clients are asking for this. Oh, we need to make a profit. Oh, we've got to satisfy the board members. Or, there's all of these pressures all the time, and they're all coming from the outside. What conscious
Okay.
leadership does is it says, let's build capacity. Imagine there's a third point up at the top over here of a triangle. Let's build the capacity in ourselves so that we coming from this capacity, the emotional capacity, the physical capacity, we're healthy, we're clear in our thoughts and all of that, so that when all these pressures come, we've got the internal capacity to handle that. And
Okay.
that's really, in so many ways, what conscious leadership is. But let me explain why conscious leadership. Well, number one, we're conscious of ourselves. We understand
Mm.
our bodies, our emotions, our gut feel, which, by the way, is critical because if we're only ever doing things on logic, we're missing out on incredible strategic edge that we can have
Yeah.
by following our intuitions as well. And I found, by the way, most of my entrepreneurial successes have been where I followed an intuition of some kind. So we
Okay.
really want to connect with our gut. We want to connect, be aware of our emotions. You don't want to, have a fight with your partner and then go and take it out on your client. You want to be
Mm.
aware of your emotions and manage your emotions. So the consciousness starts with consciousness of self. But
Okay.
then it extends to being conscious of your staff, conscious of your clients, conscious of the community that you're serving, conscious of the environment. So it extends all the way out as well. But it starts with consciousness of self, and then by being conscious of what's going on around us, we can be much more alert to saying, hang on, that client's basically just told me what they want. Let me sell that to them, or
Mm.
whatever it might be. It's that consciousness and that awareness. Or hang on, I can see this is an emotional trigger point for my client. Let's explore that a little bit. Maybe that's where we can find that a win-win solution between us. So it's all about consciousness in that sense.
Okay. Okay. And um, uh, hearing you actually explain it, it's something that it's something that is, first of all, that is true, because now what normally happens is, sometimes, as you have mentioned, that in terms of the business side of things, um when you are using when you're using your consciousness to actually try and try and lead, right? And at the very same time, not only lead, but even with your clients, the moment you start, there's a difference that happens. If like, for instance, it's hard for me to actually explain what I'm thinking at the moment, but yeah, I actually get what you are saying. I really get it, and I think I will, your book, I will have to purchase it. And I will have to I really have to purchase it. um yeah, and
But
also, you're gonna say?
no, carry on, finish what you say.
Oh, okay. I was actually gonna say that, can you explain for me the core principles of conscious leadership?
Yeah, there are many of them, and I think if I just think for myself, I'll give you one simple example on entrepreneurship, and then I'll tell you more about conscious leadership. And the
Okay.
entrepreneurship example is a lot of the time we think our job is to serve our products, but actually our job is to serve our clients, and the
Okay.
products is just a way of doing that. And that's part of that consciousness is I've seen so many entrepreneurs who are trying to sell something to somebody who doesn't need it. And they haven't connected with what the person needs. And if they can do that, then they'll be able to sell. And so this
Okay.
whole idea of consciousness is to be very, very aware of our clients and our people and this kind of thing. So in the book, we unpack three facets. And by the way, this is the first of a few books. In the second book, it'll be called Team Like Morpheus, and that's
Okay.
going to be getting into all sorts of team aspects. But in this book, there are three parts to the book. The first one is called Awaken, and this is all about developing our people. It's developing our people in terms of what we call this awaken process, and the awaken process is call, build, and release. And if you think
Okay.
about this, I'll tell you what the overall principle is. This that if you are a parent, for example, or you're raising up your team,
Okay.
You shouldn't be thinking about making them dependent on you. You should be thinking about how they can function without you, empowered, knowledgeable, taking ownership of their roles, this kind of thing. And so, one of the things that we often joke about is that if you're a parent, your job isn't to raise children. If you're a parent, your job is to raise adults, to raise
Okay.
people to become adults. And it's the
Mm.
same in our leadership. We should be raising people so that they can function and be us and take our message and our method and our thinking and the ownership. Whereas a lot of old style leadership is about control. And if it's all about control, then we're not tapping into the potential of our people. We're not tapping into their intelligence. It's Steve Jobs had this saying where he said, "There's nothing more stupid than hiring intelligent people and then telling them what to do." You actually want to hire intelligent people and then enable their thinking, bring their thinking, which is going to be bigger than your thinking, you know.
Mm.
So that's the first part of the book. The second part is called the method, the Morpheus method. And the Morpheus method is about changing mindsets, our own and our people, because a lot of what we think about, we think, oh, development means adding knowledge or skill. But you know
Okay.
what? If you can add knowledge and skill, but the mindset doesn't change, the behavior doesn't change. And so it's all about how do we develop our mindsets. And it's a process called connect, stimulate, and challenge. And that's what the second part of the book is about. And then the
Okay.
final part of the book is called impact. And in impact, what we're dealing with is our impact through our people and through impact to ourselves and to our clients, but also through our people to the clients, that kind of thing. That impact starts with this consciousness. So there's three chapters again there, conscious, tenacious, and triumphant. And the whole idea there is that we become very, very conscious of ourselves and our people, and that leads to us being able to get through thick and thin, the tenacious part, which then
Okay.
is the ultimate triumph that we're going to have, the success that we're going to have through our people and directly as well. So that's just my take on that of what's in this book. But there's going
Yeah.
to be two more books after this that also deal with more other details of conscious leadership.
Okay. Okay. And thank you for actually sharing that. I'm actually, as I've actually said, I'm looking forward to reading the book. Thank God it's actually coming out today, right? Yes. And also, um, there's something that I will have to share with the audience, right? But I will share it later on, right? And also, what is the story behind Totally Morpheus and its unique approach to leadership development?
So, as I said earlier on, when I left the IT industry, I was thinking I could change the world. But at the time, this concept of conscious leadership didn't exist. What did
Okay.
exist was something called authentic leadership, finding your true north, which really resonated with me. What happened though is over the last 10 years, there's been this emergence of this idea of leading consciously. And that led me to establish Totally Morpheus as an organization that and we've got a little saying, we instead of saying we do leadership development, we say this is not training, this is transformation. So we actually work with people in a way that really transforms behavior, that it's not just this thing of, and I've seen this too often 20 years
Okay.
ago doing a lot of training where I see people come on a training course and 2 weeks later all their old behaviors are back. They haven't actually changed any of their leadership style, any of their leadership practices. And that's a big waste of money where people are spending money on training, but it isn't changing behavior.
Yeah.
And so what I can tend to see is only about 10 or 20% of people have a permanent change of behavior. What we do in our organization is we aim for much higher. We use a multifaceted approach, which includes assessments and development work, workshops, coaching and mentoring, retreats, and weekends away, all this kind of thing. And we combine these things to make sure that there is a true transformation in the person's life and
Okay.
in the way that they lead that is going to empower them for great results, not just in the short term, but the medium and long term as well.
Okay. Okay. Thank you for actually sharing that. And thank you very much. And so just to let's just just to get to the book, right? What actually inspired you to write Lead Like Morpheus, the genius conscious leadership?
It's a great question, and it's a long answer because the journey goes back more than 15 years, where so many of my clients kept coming to me and saying, "Wow, this is so interesting. You're so wise. You've got so much that you're providing here. When is your book coming out? When is your book coming out? Are you going
Okay.
to write?" But I'm more of a speaker than a writer. So
Yeah.
I've made a few attempts at starting to write the book. I'd started doing some writing in about 2012, 2013, and some of that is in the book. I then started again in 2018 and I wrote other parts. And then about 3 years ago, 4 years ago, I started to put out two videos a week, every single week. And I did it for nearly 3 years. And
Okay.
what happened is somebody came to me and said, "But you've got these videos. Why not translate those videos into the book?"
Into the book.
And so what we did is we transcribed them. We then went through multiple editing processes to get the layout that really suited the book, that really works, which is a combination of theory and story and leadership philosophy and practical ideas and insights and stories of failure and stories of success. There aren't only success stories in
Okay.
there. And the whole idea of Lead Like Morpheus is it deals with two facets of leadership. The self-leadership, which I think is the foundation of all great leadership. I mean, if you think about it, most leadership failures we ever hear about is a failure of leading self, a failure of integrity with self that results
Yeah.
in not having integrity out there as well, or whatever it might be. So that's the main area. It deals with self-leadership and leading individuals, growing individuals. The next book or the next facet of leadership is team leadership. So anyway, so there was this facet of team leadership, which is how do I build the team to work well together? How do I create a high-performing team that operates really, really well? And so that's going to be in the second book, The Team
Okay.
Like Morpheus. And then the third book is called Shift Like Morpheus, which is the bigger aspects of leadership, what we call transformational leadership. So how do I build a culture how do I drive change in my people,
Yeah.
and how do I ultimately leave a legacy? And so we covering all four, but this book deals with the first two, which is
Okay.
self-leadership and leading individuals.
Okay. Okay. And also, as you've mentioned that on the third book, you will be focusing on the culture, right? Yeah. I think that specific part, it's something that is very important, you know. Um, in terms of I mean, in the culture part, because in most businesses that fail, right? You correct me if I'm wrong. In most businesses that fail, one thing that I've noticed is that they don't fail because most of the time they don't fail because of let's say because of financials and all of that, right? Sometimes they just fail because there's no culture inside of the company, right? And when there is no culture in the company, that makes it um most of the time, right? I'm just saying it from my experience, right? And now when there is no culture, and sometimes it says that, and when there's no culture, it makes it sometimes unbearable for people to work together, because there is a clash that will come along the way, right? And to a point where, if now the people that are supposed to be working inside of the company can't actually be able to partner up on anything without competing with each other, then that simply makes it hard for that company to grow and succeed, th
Absolutely correct. Yep.
yeah. So um and 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 I'm looking forward to, as I've actually said, I'm looking forward to reading the book, I'm really looking forward to reading it. But can you share some key takeaways from your book that you simply believe that uh are the most transformative for leaders?
Yes, certainly. And we actually have a free little tool around this called the Conscious Leadership Game Plan. And it's
Okay.
really saying that there are some fundamentals that we need to practice. The first one is the idea that I am my number one job every day. That is so foundational to conscious leadership. And we've spoken about that already. Then
Yeah.
building on that, there's a second one, which is it's not either or, it's both and. I think so many people are in their mindsets that either they must help their people or they must chase the results. No, we want both.
Okay.
Either they must lead their people or they must lead themselves. No, we want both. And so one of the things, some of my, I've got people on a 2 year leadership program, and they actually were chatting to me yesterday, and they said, you know, on your tombstone one day, it's going to say it's not either or, it's both and, because it's just some of those things that we so often think of as is black and white. It's either this or it's this. And
Yeah.
no, actually, why not look at a combination of things? Why be so limited in our thinking that it can only be one or two things? It can actually be both. Um,
Yeah.
and, you know, we can have great customer service and a great team. We can have you know, delighted customers and good results. And there's so many things that are we need to be thinking about in that way. And then the third principle is everything is internal to external. That
Okay.
the investments we make here, if we want to make a change there, you start here. I think it was Gandhi who said, "You be the change you want to see in the world." There's something about when we do it here first, it overflows out of there. So those are three that come through very, very strongly in the book. I think there's one other that I've sort of mentioned, but chapter 2 of the book is called Build, and it introduces a model called the hand model. And I'm getting a lot of feedback on this. We've done a few videos on it as well. And the
Okay.
idea is that if you want your people to grow, or even yourself to grow, the critical thing is the mindset, the thumb,
Okay.
because it touches all the other fingers. And it's the thing that if we don't change the mindset, no matter what you do, you're not going to have growth.
Yeah.
But for growth, we need clarity, you know, the pointing finger, clear, clear, clear. We need to know what our genius is, which is the strongest finger. You know, we need to know where are our strengths, what are our weaknesses? How can we leverage each other's genius? That also is
Yeah.
critical to growth. Then we want to grow character, you know, the ring finger, the one that's about commitment and tenacity
Yeah.
and those kinds of things, integrity. We want to grow that. And then finally, we want to add knowledge and skill. So knowledge and skill matters. But you know what? When you do these other ones, knowledge and skills, easy, 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 because we've got YouTube. We've got online courses. There's so much we can do to gain the knowledge and skill.
Yeah.
But if we don't have these other things in place, then it will fail. So there's a whole chapter just on that.
Mm. And I've watched that video. I have actually watched it. Yeah. And yeah. So what do you see as the future trend in the leadership development over the next decade?
Mm. So I truly believe conscious leadership will be the thing that'll come more prominent, and I'll tell you immediately why. You know, pretty much half of our workforce is already Generation X or sorry, Generation Y or Generation Z, and
Yeah.
the old styles of leadership do not work with them. And so there's some very interesting things where I often hear leaders complaining about the you know the new generations, and they don't take ownership, and they don't this and they don't that, and they got all these accusations. And then I always have two questions I ask them. And the first question is this: I hear you talking about the problems of the new generation. What
Yeah.
advantages does the new generation bring that the old generation didn't have? Because there are many. Have you started looking at that? Have you started seeing what are the things you can benefit from this new generation? And then the
Yeah.
second question I ask them, which they really don't like, is if you can't lead the new generations, can you call yourself a good leader? And of course, you know, this is a big thing, because if
Yeah.
that's half your workforce, if you don't know how to lead them, are you a good leader? You know, and the cool thing about conscious leadership is it works with the new generations, because they want to be led consciously. They don't just want to be told what to do. They want to be told
Yeah.
why. They want opportunities to learn, opportunities to grow. They want opportunities to take ownership, but not because you tell them. They're going to take ownership because of the way you lead. And I think this is the critical thing for me, is that I've been all over the world. I've worked with leaders now from more than 100 countries and managers. And I was, for example, working with a group of managers in Saudi Arabia last
Okay.
year. And they simply said to me, Ian, all of the old ways of leadership do not work anymore.
Anymore.
They just do not work anymore. So give us something that does. And this is what does.
Yeah. And and now in terms of the of your, let's say, for people that would want to join your program, how does it work? Um,
So we have multiple different programs and we custom design it for what people need. So
okay.
the only one that's kind of very standard is this 2-year program where people come and they spend a 2-year process where there is coaching and there's retreats and there's workshops on a monthly basis and all of these kinds of things. And that's a fairly established 2-year program, but it's still customized in the sense that every meeting I have with every individual, it's about where are they, what do they need, how do they grow, all that kind of thing. So
Yeah.
you know, and so but we have a variety of programs, and we want to listen to the client. We want to be conscious of what the client needs, and then we
Yeah.
will create a solution that really matches that. So people can go and find out more by going to totallymorpheus.com. There's a lot of information there, or by connecting with me, which is on LinkedIn is the best way. And it's simply Ian Hutton. If you search for Ian Hutton as one word, you will find me on LinkedIn, and then we can start a conversation and we can see where we can go.
Okay. No, no problem. And also, Ian, I will be leaving the links down below. So, as Ian has mentioned that he is dropping a book today, right? So the link to buy the book will be down below, and I believe the book will be free until the 27th, right, Ian?
I think we're talking about 48 hours that it
Or 48.
will be free on Kindle. So
Yeah,
yeah, we will uh, we will have a link for that uh, uh, on our website as well.
yeah. No, no
But we'll give you
problem.
that link as well. Yes.
Yeah, yeah. So I will be leaving all of the links down
Mm.
below, from Ian's social media pages, Ian's website, so that if any of you guys would want to get into Ian's program, you can definitely head there, right? Because sometimes for you to be able to grow, right, you need the guidance, right? Because the whole point of this podcast, even, it is to bring as much value to people, right? And Ian is more experienced in the field, right? He has more. There's more that you can learn from Ian. So I will be leaving all of the links down below, guys. Yeah. So
Thank you, Simanya. And I want to just add the YouTube will be one of those links. And
yeah,
that's a place where you can get a whole lot of free resources. I think we've now got over 200 videos there. And so there's a lot of things that are available for those who don't yet have the money to invest fully. They can get
yeah.
started already with some free resources as well.
No, no problem, Ian. No problem. I will be leaving the links down below. And thank you very much for sharing that. And also, how do you think the role of a leader will evolve in technologically advanced? Yeah.
Right. Yeah, I mean it's really interesting because there are certain things that AI does extremely well, and that we can leverage technologies, and we should be leveraging technologies. There's a whole lot around what I'm talking about, the consciousness of self and the consciousness of our people and our clients, and our shareholders and other stakeholders, that I don't think technology can replace at this stage. So I
Okay.
think it's going to be where we leverage technology where it's going to benefit us, where it's going to take some of the
Yeah.
routine things and help us with that. But the human touch is still what we need as well. So to me, it's not either or, it's both and. I told you that's one of my principles.
Yeah.
That we need this consciousness in our leadership, but we also need to be aware. of the tools and the technologies that are available to help us.
Okay. And just to ask you another question on top of that question, um as you know, at this point, there has been a thing of AI that has been that has been popping up lately, and in terms of maybe leadership and stuff like that, do you think maybe that would be of any assistance at this point or in the next decade?
I absolutely think it's gonna continue to explode. I think it's going to play a bigger and bigger role. But if you go, for example, back to the hand model, the
Yeah.
place where it's going to play the biggest role is probably in knowledge and skill. That we'll
Oh,
find
okay.
better ways of gaining knowledge and skill. But again, if we don't deal with the mindset, and I don't think AI can change a mindset, if we don't deal with the mindset, it doesn't matter. But I
Yeah.
think there's some places where that's why I make this finger is the small finger, the knowledge and skill, because it's going to become so easy because of things like AI, because of ways of learning that just weren't available before. And so it's going to be an assist for me in great leadership. But at this stage, I don't think it's going to be replacing the human connection piece that is conscious leadership.
Okay. That's a very interesting That's a very interesting answer there. And I couldn't agree more with what you are saying, you know. I couldn't agree more with it. Because without first fixing the mindset, everything else is pretty much useless, right?
Mm,
Yeah.
mm.
So what advice would you give, um to someone or to an aspiring leader who wants to actually make a significant impact in their organization?
Start with self. It's always the same advice, is it starts with self. And that might I'll give you a simple, I mean, here's a silly little thing, but I've worked with leaders and I've said, have you ever looked in the mirror? Yeah, I check my hair every day or whatever. And I say, no. Have you ever sat in front of the mirror and looked and seen what you see? And people are so uncomfortable. And so I would say have the courage to know yourself.
Okay.
And get help in getting to know yourself. There are great self-knowledge assessments like Strengths Finder, and Stand Out is another one that I use a lot. Um, get to know yourself, because there's a when we are younger, our youthful energy will allow us to do things that maybe aren't even what we're really good at. But as you get older, what starts to happen is the energy gets lower for doing things that aren't our genius. And when
Okay.
we do the things that are our genius, the energy gets greater. Now, with greater energy, we can have a bigger client impact, and we can design better products and all this kind of thing. And so, really, it's know yourself. As we know ourselves, know our strengths and our weaknesses, we can then partner for that. So, for example, let me give you one simple example
Yeah.
for entrepreneurs specifically. There's a book called Rocket Fuel. And in this book, they say that entrepreneurs, there's two things we need as entrepreneurs. I mean, there are many things that our people need, but as the actual entrepreneur, there's two things we need. The one they call a visionary, and the other one
Okay.
they call an integrator. So the visionary is the one with the ideas, the one with the big picture. The integrator is the one who makes things happen. And what I've discovered, because I only read that book last year, is that I'm a visionary, I'm not an integrator. And so,
Yeah.
because I know that, I'm now working with people who can do the integration piece for me. Otherwise, I would fail. And so, this whole thing of starting with self is knowing yourself so that you know the best is that you bring, and what you need to look for as you build your team, so that they can be strong where you are weak and you can be strong where they are weak.
Yeah.
And that way you're going to have a much, much bigger impact. That's why starting with self is always the critical thing.
Okay. I wish I could actually just go deep into that topic because it is honestly a very interesting one, you know. It is very interesting one. And to be honest, I really wish we could just go deep into it. but I'm just looking at the time right now.
Mm,
So,
mm.
yeah. But how do you actually continue to grow and learn as a leader?
So I personally find that I listen better than I read. So I listen to Audible books. I've got an Audible subscription,
Okay,
and for example, that Rocket Fuel book I just mentioned, that was one I listened to last year. I'm now busy listening to the follow-on book, which is called Traction. So I find educating myself through listening to books works for me. Now, for many
okay,
people that don't like listening, they'd rather read. That's fine. So you got to know yourself again there. But I'll often listen when I'm driving in my car. I'll put on an Audible book and I will grow myself that way. The second one is listening to my people, because as I realize, what's not working, what's working, um, I'm learning so much from them. There's so much
okay,
wisdom in my people, even in my clients, that I'm learning, and all of those I bring back to self. What's the mindset that needs to shift in me? What is the thing that I need to nurture to be a better leader? So yeah, it's listening to others, gaining knowledge, um, and then listening to self and integrating it all.
okay. Okay, thank you very much for actually sharing that. Um, and it's just a pity because I'm just looking at the time. I think if it would be fine with you, Ian, um, I think if it would be possible actually, I think if we could do just the second part, because there's a lot of questions that I wanted to actually ask you, but
I'm
it's
always
just that,
open to that. Hmm.
yeah, it's only that the time.
Sure.
But yeah, but what are some books or resources or practices that have significantly if influenced your own leadership, your leadership journey?
So there's two that come to mind immediately. Other than, of course, you need to be reading my book. Um,
Yeah.
but there are two that come to mind. I've read all of Brene Brown's books, but there was one in particular that she launched about 5 years ago called Dare to Lead. And it brings a lot of her principles together, but specifically around leading. And, many people sort of say, oh, she's all about shame and vulnerability and all this kind of thing. She's worked with the military in the US around
Okay.
leadership because her principles have worked there. So, there's some really, really good principles about daring to lead in a new way, in a more conscious way. So that book for me, Brene Brown's Dare to Lead, is brilliant, and I recommend it to people all the time. And then another one which gives you a completely different mindset and perspective on leadership is Marcus Buckingham. His latest book is called Love and Work, Love plus Work.
Okay.
And Love and Work is just fascinating because, again, it breaks the traditional mindsets. As I say, most of our problems is we have the wrong mindset. And it's talking about how to create work environments where people love their work. They love
Yeah.
they love what they do, and then they bring more energy to it, they bring more intelligence to it, they bring more ownership to it. And isn't that great leadership, where we can create environments where people love their work, they're brilliant at it, and they own it?
Okay. And in regards to the last book, and I think that book plays a huge role in the culture of the company,
Yes.
right? Yeah. And so what do you actually hope to achieve with your work at Totally Morpheus in the long term?
Can I be as bold as to say I want to leave the world in a better condition than I found it? Um,
Good. And
I really do have a global vision, and I want to bring these principles. And it's not necessarily that I want to, have trained everybody in every big global company or anything like that, because, it only takes a very small percentage to make a big difference in the world. So I would rather work deeper and really transform leadership and lives in organizations that become groundbreaking organizations. Other people wake up and say, what are they doing differently? So,
yeah.
so for me, this is the kind of thing I want to do, is to build organizations and cultures very often entrepreneurs, let's say they've grown their business and they now have 1,000 employees, um, they're often sitting with a situation of saying, but are my leaders that I've raised up, are they living this culture that I dreamed? And we
Yeah.
can help them to do that. We can help them to translate that culture, that it becomes embedded in the organization so that the organization becomes long-term viable and long-term impactful. So yeah, I want to leave the world in a better condition. And I want to do that not just through the programs of Totally Morpheus that my team delivers as well, but
Yeah.
also I love being on the stage and inspiring people with a better way to lead, a way to lead that works with the new generation, because the traditional ways are not working.
Yeah. Okay. That thank you for sharing that again. Um as I did mention that in on this episode, there would be a lot of value that will be dropped. So for the ones that are listening, I command you guys. And also, before we forget, guys, again, um, Ian's book will be for free if you buy it on Kindle for 48 hours only, right, Ian? Yeah.
Yeah.
So, guys, be sure to click the links that are down below. I will make sure that the book's link will be on the first, right. So please, guys, make sure that you check out that link and you buy that book, right. And so, Ian, how do you want to be remembered in the field of leadership development?
I am a pioneer, I am a visionary, and but ultimately, what I really want to be known for is my heart, because
Okay.
one of the things I've done is I've made myself my number one job is I've nurtured in me a capacity in my heart, and some of the most common feedback I get is my heart, my heart, my heart, and I'd rather be known for that than my brain,
Yeah.
because I really, really believe conscious leadership is about caring, caring about our people, caring about ourselves, and caring about the results, the bottom line, and the sustained profit. But for me, it's all about my heart.
Yeah. Okay. And also, Ian, is the final message or piece of advice you'd like to leave with our audience, especially those who are leaders or aspiring leaders?
It's simply this: leadership makes a difference. I think it's John Maxwell who said, "Everything rises and falls on leadership." So your business will rise and fall on your leadership. Your family will rise and fall on your leadership. So you matter as a leader, and that means start with self, invest here. That's what will set the tone of what will rise or what will fall.
Okay. Okay. Thank you for sharing that. And thank you for actually joining me on this podcast, Ian. You know, it really, really means a lot, you know. So I thank you very much. And also, for the last time, Ian, how can the listeners get a copy of your book and stay connected with your work?
Yeah, the best for the copy of the book is to go to totallymorpheus.com. That is our website. And you'll find it under the resources there. You'll find the
Yeah.
links to get the book, and future books will be listed there as well. And then for me personally, LinkedIn is the best place. Ian Hutton, as one word, you'll find me on LinkedIn.
Okay. Thank you very much, Ian, for being on this podcast. We hope to have you soon enough.
My privilege. Thank you so much for this chat.